Because when two people begin to feel something real, the mind rarely welcomes it with clarity. It responds with tension, hesitation, and a quiet kind of resistance that feels almost irrational. I have often noticed that love, especially the kind that touches something deep within us, does not arrive as comfort first. It arrives as disturbance, as a subtle disruption in our carefully constructed sense of self. And when this happens between two people at once, something even more complex begins to unfold, an unspoken dance between desire and fear. The first sign is this: we move closer, but never fully. There is a strange rhythm between us. Moments of warmth, connection, even emotional intimacy, followed by distance that feels unnecessary, even confusing. We might find ourselves sharing things we don't normally reveal, our thoughts, our past, fragments of our inner world, and then suddenly we retreat. It is not rejection, not truly. It is protection. I have come to understand that when we encounter someone who mirrors parts of our unconscious, especially those we have not yet integrated, it creates a kind of psychological pressure. The other person becomes more than just a person. They become a reflection, and reflections, especially honest ones, are not always easy to face. So we oscillate. We lean in just enough to feel something real, and then we pull away before it becomes too real. We tell ourselves stories to justify the distance. It's not the right time. Something feels off. Maybe this isn't what I want. But beneath these thoughts, something quieter is happening. The unconscious is trying to protect the structure of who we believe ourselves to be, because to love deeply often means to change. And change, even when it is necessary, can feel like a loss. I have seen this in subtle behaviors. Delayed replies that carry hidden intention, conversations that almost reach vulnerability, then suddenly shift direction, eye contact that lingers just a second too long before being broken. It is as if both people sense the depth, but neither is fully willing to step into it. And this is where the shadow begins to speak. The shadow, as I understand it, is not just darkness. It is everything within us that we have not yet accepted: our fears, our needs, our capacity for intimacy, even our longing to be seen. When another person activates this part of us, it can feel overwhelming. So instead of recognizing the connection, we begin to question it. We analyze, we overthink, we create distance where there was once closeness. But if we observe carefully, the pattern reveals itself. The connection does not disappear. It lingers beneath the surface, waiting. And this leads to the second sign. We create reasons to stay apart, even when nothing is truly wrong. This is perhaps the more subtle form of fear, because it does not feel like fear. It feels logical. We convince ourselves that there are practical barriers, differences in personality, timing, circumstances. We focus on small imperfections and magnify them until they seem significant enough to justify stepping back. But if I am honest in my observation, these reasons often feel constructed, not false, but exaggerated, as if the mind is searching for stability in a situation that feels emotionally unpredictable. What is really happening here is a form of inner conflict. Part of us is drawn toward connection, toward vulnerability, toward the possibility of something meaningful. But another part, the part shaped by past experiences, by emotional wounds, by learned defenses, resists. And when both people are experiencing this at the same time, the dynamic becomes even more intricate. There is a silent agreement, almost unconscious, to keep things in a state of almost honest, almost close, almost real. I have found that this almost space is not accidental. It is a psychological compromise, a way to experience connection without fully confronting what it demands from us. Because real connection asks for something very specific. It asks us to be seen, not just in our strengths, but in our contradictions. It asks us to let go of control, to step into uncertainty, to allow another person access to parts of ourselves we have carefully hidden. And for many, this feels dangerous, not because the other person is unsafe, but because the experience itself challenges the identity we have built. So instead of moving forward, we circle around the connection. We might joke instead of expressing something genuine. We might withdraw at the moment things begin to feel serious. We might even create distance through silence, not because we don't care, but because we care too much. I have come to see that fear of love is rarely about love itself. It is about what love reveals. It reveals our dependence, our vulnerability, our desire to be chosen. It exposes the parts of us that are still uncertain, still healing, still searching for wholeness. And when two people are both standing at this threshold, neither fully stepping in, the tension becomes almost tangible. There is something unfinished in every interaction, a sentence left incomplete, a feeling left unexpressed. And yet, beneath all of this, there is a quiet recognition. We feel it in the way we notice each other, even in silence, in the way small moments carry unexpected weight, in the way absence is felt more deeply than it should be. This is not coincidence. This is the psyche responding to something meaningful. But meaning alone is not enough. Awareness must follow, because without awareness, we remain trapped in the pattern, moving close, pulling away, creating reasons, avoiding truth, and over time, something begins to fade. Not the connection itself, but our willingness to face it. I often wonder what would happen if, in one of those moments, when the distance begins to form, when the mind starts to create its familiar excuses, we paused, not to analyze, not to control, but simply to notice, to recognize the fear as it arises, to see the pattern without immediately acting on it, because in that space of awareness, something shifts. The unconscious becomes slightly more conscious, and what once felt automatic begins to feel like a choice. But this is where the real challenge begins. But the moment it becomes a choice, we can no longer hide behind confusion. I begin to see that what we once called uncertainty was never truly uncertainty. It was hesitation dressed in logic, a quiet resistance that allowed us to stay safe while pretending we were still exploring something undefined. And safety, in this context, is not peace. It is limitation, because when I look closely, I notice how much energy is required to maintain this distance. The careful wording, the restrained emotions, the silent calculations about what to say, when to say it, and how much of myself I can reveal without crossing an invisible line. This is not natural flow. This is containment. And containment, over time, creates pressure. I feel it in the body before I fully understand it in the mind. A tension when I see their name. A pause before responding. A subtle awareness that something meaningful is being held back. Not by circumstance, but by choice. An unconscious choice shaped by fear. What fascinates me is that both people often sense this, yet neither names it. Instead, we continue the pattern. We engage, we withdraw, we open slightly, then close again. And in this repetition, a strange familiarity forms. It becomes comfortable in an uncomfortable way, predictable in its unpredictability. But beneath this pattern, something deeper is asking to be seen. The psyche does not create such tension without purpose. There is always a movement toward integration, toward wholeness. And when another person enters our life in a way that activates both longing and fear, it is rarely random. They are touching something within us that is unfinished. Not incomplete in a broken sense, but incomplete in the sense of becoming. A part of us that has not yet fully emerged into awareness. And so the connection becomes more than just emotional. It becomes symbolic. They begin to represent something, an aspect of ourselves we have not yet lived, a quality we have not yet embodied, or a depth we have not yet allowed ourselves to feel. This is why the connection feels intense, even when little has happened externally, because internally, Something significant is unfolding, yet instead of moving toward this unfolding, we often retreat. Why? Because to move forward would mean confronting not just the other person, but ourselves. It would mean asking difficult questions. What am I actually afraid of? Is it rejection? Or is it being accepted and then having to show who I truly am? Is it losing them? Or is it losing the version of myself that feels in control? These questions do not have immediate answers. They require stillness, honesty, and a willingness to sit with discomfort. And this is where many turn away. Not consciously, but instinctively, we distract ourselves. We focus on external details. We tell ourselves that time will clarify things, that if it is meant to happen, it will happen naturally. But I have come to see that what we call natural is often just what feels familiar, and what feels familiar is not always what leads to growth. Growth, in contrast, feels uncertain. It requires stepping beyond the known patterns of behavior. It asks us to act differently, even when every instinct tells us to retreat. In this dynamic, the most revealing moments are often the quiet ones. The moments when something could be said, but isn't. The moments when truth rises to the surface, but is gently pushed back down. I notice how much is communicated in silence. A message left unsent, a feeling left unspoken, a decision to wait instead of express. These are not empty spaces. They are filled with meaning, and if I pay attention, I begin to recognize a deeper truth. The fear is mutual, not identical, but mirrored. Both people are standing at the edge of something real, both aware of it in their own way, and both holding back for reasons that feel valid, yet remain unexamined. This creates a kind of psychological tension that is difficult to sustain indefinitely. Eventually, something has to shift. Either the distance becomes permanent, and the connection fades into memory, carrying with it a sense of what could have been, or one person begins to move differently, not dramatically, not impulsively, but with awareness. I have found that awareness does not immediately remove fear, but it changes my relationship to it. Instead of being controlled by it, I begin to observe it. I notice the impulse to withdraw, and instead of following it automatically, I pause. I notice the urge to hide what I feel, and instead of suppressing it completely, I allow myself to acknowledge it internally. This may seem small, but it is not, because in that pause, the pattern is interrupted, and when the pattern is interrupted, even slightly, a new possibility emerges. I begin to realize that vulnerability is not an all-or-nothing act. It does not require a dramatic confession or a complete exposure of the self. It begins with honesty in small moments, a slightly more genuine response, a willingness to stay present instead of pulling away, a choice to express something real, even if it feels uncertain. These small shifts create movement, and movement over time changes the dynamic. But this is where the tension deepens, because as soon as one person begins to move toward authenticity, the other is confronted with a reflection of their own hesitation. This can either open the space or intensify the resistance. If both remain unaware, the pattern may tighten, the fear may increase, the distance may grow. But if even one becomes conscious of what is happening beneath the surface, something subtle begins to transform. The connection is no longer driven entirely by unconscious patterns. It becomes a space where awareness and fear coexist, and in that space, something new is possible. Not certainty, not immediate resolution, but the possibility of stepping beyond the almost. Yet even here, the question remains quietly present. What happens when the moment arrives where neither distance nor silence can protect us anymore, and we are left standing with nothing but the truth we have been avoiding? And in that moment, I begin to understand that the truth we avoid is rarely about the other person. It is about the version of ourselves that would have to emerge if we stopped avoiding. Because if I am honest, truly honest, I see that loving someone is not the most frightening part. Becoming someone who can sustain that love, That is where the real tension lives. Up until now, I have been able to remain divided. One part of me feels deeply, intuitively, almost instinctively drawn toward them. Another part observes, calculates, and restrains. These two parts have coexisted in a fragile balance, each preventing the other from going too far. But the moment truth enters fully, that balance begins to collapse. I can no longer pretend I do not feel what I feel. And once I acknowledge it, even silently, something irreversible happens. The connection is no longer ambiguous, it becomes real, and reality demands response. This is where many people retreat for the final time. Not because the feeling disappears, but because it becomes undeniable. And what is undeniable requires action, or at least a conscious decision not to act. Both carry weight. I start to notice how quickly the mind tries to regain control in this stage. It introduces doubt with greater intensity. It revisits past disappointments. It projects future complications. It builds a narrative that feels convincing enough to justify stepping back. But beneath all of that, there is a quieter layer of awareness that sees through it, a recognition that these thoughts are not entirely about the present connection. They are echoes, patterns shaped by previous experiences, now activated in a new context. This is where the shadow becomes most visible, not as something dark or threatening, but as something familiar. The fear of being misunderstood, the fear of not being enough, the fear of giving more than we receive, the fear of losing control over our emotional world. These are not abstract ideas. They are lived experiences stored within the psyche, influencing perception without announcing themselves directly. And when another person begins to matter, these fears rise, not to harm us, but to protect us in the only way they know how, by keeping us within what feels safe. But safety, once again, comes at a cost, because in protecting ourselves from potential pain, we also distance ourselves from potential depth. I begin to see that this is not a situation that resolves itself through time alone. Time can soften intensity, yes. It can blur certain emotions. It can even create the illusion that the connection was not as significant as it once felt. But what time does not do is transform the underlying pattern. That requires awareness, and awareness requires courage. Not the kind of courage that appears bold or dramatic, but the quiet kind. The willingness to sit with discomfort without immediately escaping it, to remain present when every instinct says to withdraw, to acknowledge what is real without rushing to control its outcome. This kind of courage does not eliminate fear. It coexists with it, and in that coexistence, something begins to shift internally. I start to feel less divided, not because the fear disappears, but because I am no longer entirely identified with it. I can feel the pull to retreat and still choose even slightly to remain. I can notice the urge to hide and still allow a fragment of truth to be seen. And this is where the dynamic between two people begins to change in a more profound way. Because when one person becomes less reactive, less driven by unconscious defense, the space itself transforms. It becomes less about prediction and more about presence, less about managing outcomes, and more about experiencing what is actually there. But this transformation is delicate. It cannot be forced. It cannot be rushed. If I push too quickly, I may overwhelm not only myself but the other person as well. Because they too are navigating their own inner landscape, their own fears, their own unresolved patterns. This is something I must remember, that just as I have been protecting parts of myself, they have been doing the same. And so the connection exists not just between two individuals, but between two inner worlds, each complex, each layered, each in the process of becoming more conscious. This realization softens something within me. It replaces urgency with patience, not passive waiting, but attentive presence. I begin to listen more closely, not just to what is said, but to what is avoided. I notice the moments where they hesitate, where their expression shifts, where something almost emerges and then retreats. These are not signs of disinterest. They are signs of depth encountering resistance. And if I meet those moments with pressure, I reinforce the very fear that creates the distance. But if I meet them with steadiness, with openness, something else becomes possible, a gradual unfolding. Not immediate clarity, but increasing honesty. Not perfect alignment, but growing awareness. Still, even within this unfolding, the tension does not disappear completely, because at some point, the connection reaches a threshold, a point where staying in the almost is no longer sustainable, where the cost of avoidance begins to outweigh the fear of expression. And this threshold is not always obvious. It can appear in a small moment, a conversation that lingers longer than usual, a silence that feels heavier, a look that carries more meaning than before. Something shifts, and in that shift there is an opening, a narrow space where truth can either be expressed or once again deferred. This is the moment that quietly defines everything that follows, not because it guarantees a specific outcome, but because it reveals something essential, whether we are ready to step beyond who we have been, even slightly, whether we are willing to risk the discomfort of being seen in exchange for the possibility of something real. And as I stand within this space, aware of both the fear and the feeling, I begin to sense that the question is no longer about whether we love each other, but whether we are willing to become the people who can.
And when we reach this point, the situation becomes much clearer than it first appeared. If I step back and look at everything we've explored, the core idea is actually simple. Two people can feel a real emotional connection, but at the same time, both can feel afraid of what that connection might require. So instead of moving forward, they stay in a space of almost expressing, almost committing, almost understanding. This creates confusion on the surface, but underneath there is a pattern. We move closer, then pull away. We feel something real, then question it. We find reasons to stay distant, even when nothing is clearly wrong. From a psychological point of view, this is not random behavior. Much of it can be explained by how the unconscious mind works. In modern psychology, it is widely accepted that a large part of our thoughts, emotions, and decisions are influenced by processes outside our full awareness. We are not always consciously choosing our reactions. Often, we are responding based on past experiences, emotional memories, and learned patterns. So when we feel a strong connection with someone, it does not only involve the present moment. It can also activate older emotional patterns, especially those related to closeness, trust, and vulnerability. This is where the idea of the shadow becomes useful. In Jungian psychology, the shadow refers to the parts of ourselves that we do not fully recognize or accept. This is a well-known theoretical concept, not something directly measurable, but many psychologists and therapists find it helpful in understanding human behavior. The shadow is not only negative traits. It can also include our need for love, our sensitivity, or our fear of being hurt. When we hide these parts, they don't disappear. They influence us quietly. So when we meet someone who triggers these hidden parts, we may feel both attracted and uncomfortable at the same time. In everyday life, this can look very familiar. You may notice that you think about the person often, but hesitate to reach out. You may feel comfortable talking deeply one day, then distant the next. You may create logical reasons to step back, even if your feelings suggest something else. This is the unconscious trying to maintain balance. On one side, there is a natural human need for connection. Research in psychology strongly supports that humans are social beings, and emotional bonds are important for well-being. On the other side, there is a need for safety. If past experiences have taught us that closeness can lead to pain, the mind learns to protect itself. So what we experience is a conflict between two systems, the desire to connect and the need to protect. This conflict does not mean the connection is false. It means it is meaningful enough to activate deeper layers of the psyche. However, it is important to stay balanced in how we understand this. Not every confusing relationship is a deep psychological bond. Sometimes mixed signals can simply come from lack of interest, poor communication, or different life priorities. These are practical, real-world explanations that should not be ignored. So we have to be careful not to romanticize every situation. What we can say with more confidence is this: when both people show a pattern of closeness and distance, and both seem emotionally affected, there is likely some level of inner conflict involved. But the exact meaning of that conflict is not always clear. Some parts of human behavior are well studied, like attachment styles and emotional regulation. These are supported by research. Other ideas, like deep symbolic connections or unconscious mirroring between two people, are more theoretical. They are useful for reflection, but they are not proven in a strict scientific sense. And then there are parts that remain unknown. Human emotions are complex. Even with modern psychology, we cannot fully explain why certain people affect us so deeply, or why timing and circumstances play such a strong role. So instead of trying to find a perfect explanation, I find it more helpful to focus on awareness. What can we actually observe within ourselves? First, we can notice our patterns. Do we move closer, then pull away? Do we avoid expressing what we feel? Do we create reasons to stay distant? Just observing these patterns without judgment is already a powerful step. Second, we can ask simple, honest questions. Am I afraid of rejection? Or am I afraid of being seen as I truly am? Am I protecting myself from real danger or from discomfort and uncertainty? These questions are not meant to force an answer. They are meant to bring a little more clarity to what we feel. Third, we can practice small moments of honesty. This does not mean making big, dramatic confessions. It can be something very simple. Being slightly more open in conversation, not hiding a genuine reaction, or staying present instead of withdrawing. These small actions slowly reduce the gap between what we feel and how we behave. Over time, this can change the entire dynamic, because when we become more aware of our inner patterns, we are less controlled by them. We may still feel fear, but we understand it better. We may still hesitate, but we recognize why. And this creates a different kind of experience. Not perfect, not completely certain, but more real. In the end, this situation is not only about whether two people love each other. It is also about whether each person is willing to understand themselves. Because without that understanding, the same pattern can repeat again and again, even with different people. But with awareness, something shifts. We begin to see that the tension we feel is not just a problem to solve, but a signal to explore, a signal pointing inward. And when we follow that signal with patience and honesty, we don't just learn about the connection, we begin to learn about ourselves.